saving money really fast, quit my job. A year later, bought another house. 2018, went real estate full time. And since then, I've scaled from 70 doors today.
Hey, y'all, Perry Jeffries here. Welcome to Cash Flow Unlocked. I'm excited to have a guest on with us today. You know how sometimes you meet somebody for the first time and you're like, you know what, we just kind of have similar souls and alignment. And that's what I found here with our guest today, Jessie Lang. And the irony of it here is we are both part of another community, another coaching community. And we were on a call one day and people were introducing themselves. Come to find out we lived in the same city.
Like
and
10 miles.
Like 10 miles away from each other,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And we both have Facebook groups that have the word unlocked in it.
Yeah, it was meant to be.
I was like, hold on now, this is just too good to be true, right? Yeah. So we connected, had a conversation and decided here to introduce Jessie to our community because she has just done a phenomenal job doing what she does best. So with that being said, I'm going to read her quick bio here, and then we're going to get into asking some questions and learn a little bit more about my friend here. So her bio. Jessie started investing in real estate by house hacking over 10 years ago and has since grown a rental portfolio to 70 plus doors. She manages with a small team. She lives and invests in Columbus, Ohio and surrounding counties. She has been able to scale rapidly because she employs the BRRRR method. I don't know if I was supposed to say it that way, but it felt good.
Nailed it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So that BRRRR is for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat to acquire properties with little to no money left in the deal. Her focus and specialty is single family housing, as well as small apartments in affordable housing space. When she isn't managing rentals or coaching, she is traveling with her wife, Laura, and spoiling her five pets and getting her hands dirty in DIY house projects. Jessie, welcome to the community. Welcome to the family. How are you today? Talk to us.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's almost like I wrote that.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
So tell us about what you do, because you specialize in this rental income space, which I find so important in this whole, wealth creation gambit, right? So we was talking a little bit earlier about it. There's so many different ways and so many different vehicles to go out and create wealth and create passive income. And you specialize in one of those ways that I love for our community to learn more about. We shared on one of our phone calls that I used to be in real estate. I'll share a little bit of my experience with that. But for folks who are listening to the podcast or in the community for the first time, I'm going to give my definition of wealth, and then we're going to really dive into what Jessie does best. So the definition of wealth that we landed on after about 20 years of being in this investment advisory space is simply this. Wealth is the accumulation of assets which can be converted into a passive income in order to cover your lifestyle expense. So we look at wealth as simply this. What assets are you going to accumulate, which give off passive income so that you have enough passive income to buy your financial freedom? And obviously real estate is one of those deals, and you obviously know what you're doing. So with that being said, tell us a little bit about how'd you even get into this space?
Yes. Yeah. So I was a accidental landlord. I think, it's kind of a term that's come to light in the, last 10 years or so. And it's happened to so many people. I grew up in Austin, Texas, and I went to college at University of Texas. And, society says you need to buy a house, get a job, get married, have kids, all this. Well, I didn't do a lot of it, but I did do some of it. And I ended up buying a condo in Austin that it was $92,000. It was my whole life savings. $3,000 down was literally, what I had saved to that point. And they gave me the loan. I joked that the bank had no business giving me that loan. They did. And it really set off a really, strong path in my career. And I was I knew that I really could not afford the mortgage. So my partner at the time and then a Craigslist roommate were both living and paying me rent. And so I was house hacking before I even really knew it was a term, just because I was like being resourceful. I was like, this mortgage is majority of the income I bring in every month, and I can't live like this. So like, how can I get some more income? So I just had people move in and they were paying me rent. They were paying the bills. It was like, I was pretty sweet setup. I was able to save some money. And my partner at the time, we split. And I knew that I emotionally like didn't want to live in the house. I knew that it would be crazy to sell it in Austin in 2013, 14. So, and I knew that I could not just afford to pay a mortgage and live somewhere else. So I got tenants. I got residents. In a matter of 2 weeks, we were fully moved out, and I had 4 college boys who were living in my condo. I know. And I joke that they could have ruined my real estate career before I ever got started, but they were great. Yeah, they were really good.
That's
So
what's up.
yeah, so I was house hacking just by pure necessity, and I moved out. I rented for a couple months, and then ended up buying another place with some of the money I'd saved. Got roommates there, had 1 long-term rental. A year later, bought another house, moved in there. So I had roommates at that house and had 2 long-term rentals. And at this point, it was like all my bills were paid. Not only my bills paid, but I was making money every month in addition to my W-2 income. So I'm like, dude, this is pretty sweet. I was saving money really fast. And instead of like taking real estate seriously at that point, 2016 came, quit my job, got all long-term rentals, and I went to travel the world for a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. So like real estate, even a small portfolio can afford you incredible opportunities. So I went to travel for a year. I met my wife while we were traveling. One thing led to another. We ended up in Columbus, Ohio. That was 2017. 2018 went real estate full time. 2021 got really serious about the BRRRR method that we'll talk about. And since then, I've scaled from those 3 I owned in Austin up to 70 doors today.
So let's pause for a second. Woo. So I'm taking
a
my
lot of
notes
info.
here. I love having guests on and whatnot, because the value that you find from other folks I think is just amazing. And you drop some gems in here. I just want to make sure I circle back to them here before we get too far into our conversation. Literally became an accidental landlord.
Yes.
That's so dope. We used to have this saying back at one of the firms I used to work with back in the day, was we would come across accidental millionaires. And they'd be like, well, and folks like, what do you mean an accidental millionaire? Literally folks who were working a job someplace, somebody told them to put money into their, contribute to their 401k. There was some profit sharing, and they looked up one day and they had 1.2 million, and they couldn't tell you what they were invested in, how they did it. They were literally accidental millionaires. So it's just amazing how, things happen accidentally, but when you see that opportunity, you can jump on it. So I thought that was just super cool. I love that, the accidental millionaire. The other piece in here, again, kind of going to this pure necessity piece that you mentioned, you knew you couldn't afford to mortgage. That sent chills down my body, because it's like, yo, a lot of people don't move forward with things because they're like, man, I can't afford it. But you said, no, I'm going to buy this house because, that's what we're supposed to do, is own something, right? I can't really afford it. You did it anyway, but then you figured it out. Yes. And now that turned into 70 doors from that one door, which is absolutely mind blowing right there. That is so dope.
I know everything is in hindsight, it was honestly probably irresponsible, but it's one of the things I'm glad no one told me. Like, I'm so glad that no one told me, hey, Jessie, you really shouldn't spend like down to the last $100 as a down payment on a house. Like, that's a bad idea. But I did it.
And yeah, no doubt.
Glad no one told me.
Oh man, I'm glad they didn't either, because we wouldn't be having this
Yeah.
conversation. And you know what? What's so crazy is that's what, unfortunately, we'll hear that with people who haven't been in that space, like, oh no, you shouldn't do that and whatnot. And this is so good. And then this whole pure necessity piece, right? When I didn't back then, when I was doing it back in 2001. Yeah, 2001, 2002. I don't think we could even call it house hacking, right? So I had this crib. I had a 4 bedroom split level, right? And I had somebody living with me, had somebody at the gym that I was working at living with me. And shoot, I think in that one property, we probably had 4 different people at different times living there. And then I
Mhm.
used that property as leverage, got a HELOC, used that to buy another property. Then one of the roommates moved over there with me, right? So we were kind of doing the same thing. And I remember at one point in time, we had got to having a 4 unit, where this is so key right here, because I have this one right here, that you don't even have to have a huge portfolio to have financial freedom.
Yeah.
Sis, it's so many people who would love to travel the world, but cannot, and not realizing that you don't have to have millions and billions of dollars. You just have to have enough passive income to cover your
Mhm.
lifestyle to give you that financial freedom, which is time freedom. So I remember when I had my 4 unit, and it's making me sick right now even talking about it. I mentioned it to you when we talked a couple weeks ago. I had a 4 unit. I lived in every one of the units at one point in time. It covered my living expense. It
Yep.
covered the payment on my Jaguar. Like, it was the best thing ever, right? So this is so key right here. So I love this. So travel the world, met your wife, and really start getting kind of a method around what you do. So you mentioned this Burr method. What's
Mhm.
this Burr method? Talk us through this one. What is this thing?
Yep. So the Burr method, there's 5 letters, and 4 R's. Okay. So it's buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
Love it.
So the idea is that we're buying under market value, typically a distressed asset, either distressed physically, or maybe in a situation where there's foreclosure, bankruptcy. And then we are renovating that property up to market standards. And even for a rental, we're doing not high end, they're rental grade, but we're not really cutting corners, because I want the highest appraised value that I can get. Because once I get the unit rented, I'm taking that nice little package of a renovated property, a market rate tenant, and I'm taking it to a bank. So I want the appraisal for that bank to be as high as possible. So I take it to the bank, that's the refinance, and they'll loan me 75%, 85% of what it's worth
Hmm?
as a new loan against the property. I pay off either my hard or my private money lender that I used to purchase it.
Hmm?
And then I own this property, if done quote unquote correctly, or the perfect Burr, I own this property with none of my own money in the deal.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
And then so I paid off my private money, I paid off my hard money. That's access or capital I have access to again. So that last R, I'm going to repeat. I'm going to go back to my harder private money lender, and I'm going to borrow that money again to do a new project, and just do it over and over and over.
Woo. Chills. So what I loved about this, when you kind of going through this, Jessie, is like, yup, that's what I was doing, but I didn't know it was a method. It was like, oh no, this is kind of what we were doing. And the reason I have chills going down my back, it's literally what we preach in our Wealth Accelerator method. So let me share the Wealth Accelerator method. And
Okay.
then we're going to jump into a little bit more of these points inside the Burr method. I just like saying that. I think that's just really cool. So our Wealth Accelerator method has 3 pillars. So the first pillar is cash flow management, right? We have money coming in. What are we doing with those dollars to make sure that we have discretionary income to be able to invest or accumulate assets? Our third pillar is systematic leverage investing. What systematic way can we put money into an asset so that we
Mm-hmm.
can go out and borrow against that asset in order to go buy other assets that create more income? right? And then you have kind of on our last pillar of that is the tracking, right? And making sure we're measuring and keeping a scoreboard of what we're doing.
Mhm.
So when we look at what you're doing with your BRRRR method, first one is buy. So you're buying a distressed property. So you're buying it at a market value, right? So you're buying
Under
something.
market.
Yep. So you're buying it where you can, you kind of have some equity in there when you buy it, correct?
We can add value.
We can add value. That's
Yeah.
super important right there. Then the renovating. You said something I thought was really powerful here. So it's like, hey, you don't go super high end, but you definitely go higher on the rehab because you want it to appraise more. Why are you doing that? I think that's important for people to understand.
For leverage. So if the bank is going to give me a percent of a number, I want that number to be as high as possible so I can get the most leverage against that asset that I own.
Love it.
Right. So if they're going to give you 75%, say it appraises for $100,000, that's not likely in any market, but say it appraises for 100K, the bank will give you 75 and I owe 75 to my lenders.
Mhm.
So that's a wash that my new bank pays off the old bank.
Yep.
And then I own 25% equity that the effort I put in was my time and energy. It was no money in it.
Love it.
Yeah. So that's why I'm going for the highest ARV. And another reason also is what we call like hardening the property.
Mhm.
So when we put a resident in place, ideally you pick the perfect person and they leave your property in the exact same condition that you handed it over. But we all know that that doesn't actually happen.
It does not.
It does not. So we go a little bit above and beyond on the renovation to harden it. So we don't do any soft surfaces. We do like tile tub surrounds. We do tile kitchen backsplashes. Anything that could be damaged, is likely to be damaged, we will go above and beyond to harden that item.
Yeah.
And then also if the hot water tank is 5 years from needing to be replaced, if the roof, windows, we'll just go ahead and replace it now because it's going to bump up my ARV. Versus if I refinance and then I have that expense, no one's giving me that money back. That's straight out of my pocket.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh yeah, absolutely amazing. I love that. So
Yeah.
now
So
we
the
renovate.
idea is it's
ahead.
we're aiming for 10 years of no major maintenance.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
10 years of no major maintenance. Okay, perfect. And I love that because you use one of my favorite words, leverage, trying to get the
Yes.
absolute highest value on it so that when you get that funding or that refinance, you can leverage it. I love it. All right. Then we rent it out. So the renting piece, we got some cash flow coming in, right? How do you go about pricing that? And you don't have to give us all your secrets because we're going to definitely send people to your community, right? But just give us a little snippet. How do you even go about pricing that? And what do you do with that cash flow when you get it?
So the same way that you would price like comparable sales, we use similar approaches for rental market rent. If you're in maybe using like a Section 8 program or something like that, then the program will have set payment criteria for each 1, 2, 3 bedroom. So we try to just kind of stay around what Section 8 would pay or what the market rate rent is. They're usually pretty comparable.
Gotcha. Love it. And then that
But
cash flow is coming.
Our units are always going to be a little bit nicer. We aim for about 10% nicer than everything around it. So nothing crazy, just like that little bit. If someone's deciding between two, they're going to go with us and we can charge for that little bit nicer. Yeah.
And get a high quality tenant.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay.
You don't want to go too over the top because then, if you're in like a developing neighborhood and you just blow it out of the water on the renovation, you're going to have a discrepancy on what type of house or what type of person the house attracts and what type of person the neighborhood attracts. So you'll never get it rented because there's too much of a gap there. So you have to basically just do what everyone else is doing plus a little bit more.
Gotcha.
If you blow it out of the water, it'll never rent because the wrong people are looking at it.
Yep, your niche market is off. Got it.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, this is awesome. So we rented it out. Now we got some cash flow coming in. Here's an argument, well, not even an argument, but a debate. I hear a lot out there, right? You'll hear some people say that, rental income is not passive income. And they're saying it's not passive income because, you still may have to go in, fix up hot water tank, or, tenant may not pay, or things of that nature. I don't agree with that, but I love to get kind of your thought on that. Do you consider the rental income passive income?
No,
Nope.
no, we don't. We self-manage, meaning I am not necessarily the one speaking with my residents or scheduling the maintenance, but I own the process of how it's done and the standard that we deliver.
Mhm.
So even if I'm not the one on the phone with the resident, I have, trained my team on how that conversation goes, how we treat our residents, what is and isn't acceptable, that whole thing. That said, even if you have property management, which I did for about a year, you still have to manage the manager. So I found that I was putting in just as much effort managing a manager as just owning it myself. So that's when we brought everything back in-house. I hired internally, standardized, systematized everything, and have been able to hand it off. But I'm still involved day to day on any decisions on what work is or is not done, who moves in, who doesn't move in. So I do not, even if you have property management, I do not think rentals are passive.
And I had to ask you that question because you hear that debate all the time. No, it's not passive. And so when we've kind of even researching this, we would find things that said, hey, passive income. And I found one definition that I liked is passive income is income from an asset that you don't necessarily have to work for day to day, which I like that, because typically, even if you're, investing in this, growing your online business, right? There's still some activity that you may need to do, but you may not have to show up and punch a clock for 8 hours, right? So that's how we're looking at buying our freedom back and buying our time back. I love this. This is awesome. Okay. This other R, refinance. So we now have this nice property. We've hardened the property. So the stuff that could potentially break, we put in good quality product. So we don't have to put anything in for another 10 years or so. And now we go get it refinanced. And you brought up something that a lot of people aren't familiar with. I am, but this is awesome. So you do the refinance to pay off your hard or private lender. Walk us, kind of just give us a little bit. We don't want to give the whole thing away here, but give us a little bit. Yeah, give us what's going on here.
Yeah. So when we're buying these assets, typically, not always, there's some situation where the seller needs to close quickly. So that's where, private money is just an individual, who may have money in a 401k or savings account that they're not using. So we can work with the individual, or we could work with a hard money lender, which is, similar to a traditional bank, but they have a different product offering. It's basically unlimited money, and you pay points, you pay a higher APR. They're usually short-term loans. So they're, short-term, high interest loans. And it's not designed to be your stabilized long-term financing. It's designed to cover the purchase, cover the renovations, and then, for them to be paid back.
Got it.
So when you refi, whatever that bank will give me and whatever I've borrowed, we underwrite everything so that those line up. And actually, if the bank will give me more than what I owe to my, first lender, then that's actually cash or tax-free income. It's not income because it's a form of a loan, but you get money in your pocket tax-free. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of equivalent to, people who borrow against, say, their insurance product, right? I won't get heavy into that, but very similar. Hey, I'm borrowing against my cash value insurance product to become my own bank. Technically, that can be positioned as tax-free income because, yes, you did receive that cash. It is a loan, but the loan is being paid by somebody else. Hence, the tax freeness, right? So this is really good. Very, very much similar. I love this right here. This is awesome, awesome, awesome. And then let's see how I got my buy, I got my renovate, I got my rent, my refinance. And then the last one here was it repeat. How do we repeat this bad boy? So go back out. So talk to me.
Yeah. So you paid off your lenders and that capital is free now. And so I can borrow that same 150K 3, 4, 5, 10 unlimited times. And every time my lender is making money, I'm getting a house. So we're all happy. It's a win-win.
Yeah.
And you can just do it over and over. You just want to make sure, like, before we buy anything, we have a BRRRR calculator. It's like there's probably 20, 25 different inputs.
Yep.
And then it gives you an idea of, you know, where that deal will net out.
Okay.
If it's something you should buy or not. And then as part of the repeat, I always go back and do my postmortem. So as soon as really the end of a BRRRR process is when you close on the refi loan. So as soon as you close on that loan, you're now in a stabilized position. So I take that final HUD, the, you know, closing statement, put it back into my postmortem review, and I get a good idea of like where the deal landed.
Yeah.
Like not just, you know, it's my underwriting based on actuals. So then from that's like a huge part of my repeat. Pay back my lender, do the postmortem, and then learn some, you know, take my lessons away and go do it again.
I love this because when we talked about even the third pillar of our method, that whole keeping score and the measurement, after the deal is done, you're then coming in and said, okay, let's look at how this deal went down. This is how we thought it was going to go. This is what it did. This is where we could improve. This is where we did really well. Okay, lesson learned. Let's go do it again. Absolutely amazing. Sister, this is so dope. Man, I got so many different questions I want to ask you, but I'm not going, because we could be on here for like 10 hours. But something you mentioned here, and when I'm even working with my clients, we had a VIP day with a client the other day, where we spend, 4 to 6 hours with them. Just, it's going to be us, and we're going to get everything, established and whatever they need to do to start increasing this passive income, right? And one question they asked me is like, hey, Perry, I got this HELOC. Isn't that a debt? And I'm going to pay off one of the goals was to pay off all of my debts. So, and hey, y'all, for folks listening to this, I haven't even teed Jessie up for this one yet, but what is your thoughts on the people who are super afraid of debt? Because I'm taking my notes right here. I'm not going to say anything else. Just what is your thoughts on debt? Yes.
I'm sure that you know my position on debt.
Right.
So everyone's like,
it's probably exactly like mine, but go ahead. I want to hear what you got to say.
Everyone is like so mad at banks all the time. And I'm like, I love banks. Like, I love banks. Some of my bankers are my favorite people because we're keeping each other alive,
Yeah, no
like,
doubt.
I'm happy to pay someone interest. I would love to pay you interest. Be as greedy as you want, because if it makes sense for me and it makes sense for you, then we all win.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
I think Dave Ramsey is wrong about most things. And he's speaking to a certain portion of America, which it is important. But if you take everything to heart, you'll never take the risk. And like we talk about leverage, and it's thrown around so often, but leverage is risk, right?
Correct.
The higher leverage, the more risk. The lower leverage. If you own something free and clear, you have zero leverage and very little risk. So they're correlated. But if you never even take the chance and get some, smartly underwritten and, savvy investments with leverage, how are you ever going to get ahead?
Facts. So man, when I said, I meant that from the bottom of my heart. We spoke that one time and I was like, yep, this is my people's here, because we hear that a lot, especially in my space, in a traditional financial advising space or whatever that is. It's like, oh no, the talking heads say debt is bad and whatnot. I'm like, well, I really don't know how you're going to reach this generational wealth of gold that you
Yeah.
have and get this financial freedom that you're looking for if you're not using some form of leverage, right? And that form of leverage, so where debt is bad is the consumer silly debt. But when we're talking about, hey, you know what? Hey, banker, you want to charge me whatever 10% on this deal? That's fine. I'm going to pay you that because I'm going to buy this asset that's going to give me 20% and I'm use your 10% and still net out 10. And so I just love hearing somebody else say that, even from a real estate standpoint, right?
Yeah,
Because
1000%.
oh my goodness. So
without the use of leverage, even when I was joking that the first bank never should have given me that loan, even though it's owner occupant, it's still leverage. I mean, I would still be saving 15 years later to buy that first house if I was trying to pay cash. And the value increased faster than I ever would have. I would own 0 houses if I wasn't okay with that risk and leverage.
Man, we see it now where so many folks are like, oh my gosh, this is a bad time to buy real estate because the interest rates are high. When you hear people say that, what's your response to that, Justin? When people are like, oh no, don't buy now because interest rates are high. What's your thoughts? I'm gonna share mine.
I just put your head in the sand. I mean, just do it. The appreciation is so much greater than any interest rate that you're going to pay. Like when my parents, when they were buying their first house, they were at like 18% interest. And guess what? They still made money.
Right. It's so wild.
Yes. Yeah. They refinanced when it went down and then they sold it for a big profit because real estate increases in value.
Yeah. It's one of those deals, right? And then the folks who are inside our community, make sure you guys are asking questions. We are going to try to get through some of your questions here before we finish up. And if you're not inside our community yet and you're listening to this via the podcast, go to facebook.com/groups/cash flow unlock. Get down with the community because we share a bunch of gems in here and bring in awesome guests like this. Going back to the lending piece, I was having this conversation with my client one day and I said, hey, what were the interest rates back in like the 80s?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, probably lower than they are right now. And it's like, no, you know what I'm saying? So I actually have my dad's mortgage from when they bought their first home up in Akron, Ohio. And it was crazy. It was, I think, 16% was the mortgage, right? And then I shared with him, and I was talking to one of my lenders here recently. I was like, it's so funny that people are terrified of a 7% loan. And when I was buying stuff in 2001, give 7%? Give me that all day. But folks got used to this 2.5%, 3%, like that was the norm. And again, getting so locked into the percentage, right? Versus looking at the deal and the overall return on investment, right?
And the fact that in a long-term or even short-term, if this is rented, if it's a rented asset, someone else is paying the percentage.
Facts.
Someone else is paying the interest.
Yes.
You're not paying it.
Yes. I'm going to bring up this one stat real quick because when I showed this to a client, they were mind blown. So I was having this conversation with the client and we started talking about debt. And I said, well, leverage is debt and leverage is risk, as you said, but if you're using that leverage to acquire an asset that generates income and gives you the opportunity for growth, then you just need to measure the cost and kind of see what it looks like. And she said it was so crazy. She was like, oh my gosh, I sit in a room with our attorneys all the time talking about how we have this debt and how our debt is performing based upon these properties that we own. And they're always looking at like, yeah, let's acquire more debt to get more properties to have more cash flow. So I asked her this question. I said, hey, there are some companies out here, major companies that have a ton of cash flow, bringing a ton of revenue. And I said, hey, how much debt do you think Apple has on their books?
Yeah.
And she is like, I don't know. If this is correct, as of June 2023, Apple has $109.2 billion of debt. I said, why do you think Apple has debt? Because they make plenty of money. Because it sometimes makes more sense to use somebody else's money keep my asset in place and go out there and generate some cash flow, right? So
Yes.
this conversation is just so dang on cool. Let me see here. What else I want to cover here with you before we get off of here, because this has just been amazing. We spoke about leverage a little bit. You and I spoke about it just very briefly here. Every once in a while, you'll have some people kind of come up to you and be like, hey, so I got this 401k and can I use
Yeah.
real estate with that? Typically, what do you tell them to do? And then I'll follow up with kind of my thought on the process on the deal as well. So what do you
Yeah,
typically do?
I would love to hear your input. So when people approach, I mean, we're always working with private lenders. I probably speak to a new private lender every week that, someone we have some money in savings. We have 100K in our house that's just
Yeah.
sitting here not making any money. So 401k specifically, I don't know a ton about like the details and the actual mechanics of it, but I will send that person to a custodian for like a self-directed 401k, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe you have to be self-directed. And then
That's an option for sure. Yes, absolutely.
okay. And then they could work with the custodian. And then once you lock in like how to tap into that 401k, then I will bring you the deal all day long.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you write the check, whatever you guys sort out. And then I will pay your 401k interest.
Yep. Absolutely. So a couple different ways we could play the 401k. The self-directed is absolutely option. So for those who are kind of maybe hearing me talk about this for the first time, I'm a huge advocate of using your assets and using leverage. So a wealth principle that very few people really understand and grasp is that wealthy folks typically don't sell their assets. They leverage those assets to borrow funds to go out and buy more assets. So we hear a lot about the Rockefellers and how they built, this massive empire using insurance and trust and things of that nature. Well, understand when with that trust, they don't never take money out of it. But typically they would actually get lines of credit on the trust. So they never really liquidated their asset. They went and borrowed against it, right? So with the 401k, if someone is coming to us and like, man, I'm going to get into this deal, but I got this 401k. It kind of depends on a couple different factors. So this is me kind of going to a financial advisor mode, but this will be good for your community and also my community.
Yeah, I'm learning.
Yep. So if your 401k is at your current job, that typically means that you can't move it because it's your current 401k. But most 401ks under what we call ERISA guidelines, you can borrow up to 50% of the balance of that 401k to a max of 50,000 as of this tax year. It changed during the pandemic. You can borrow up to 100, but back to kind of normal standards, up to 50,000 of that 401k. Now, someone be like, well, why would I borrow from my 401k? Well, one, it's not a reportable loan.
Okay.
Two, the interest that you pay on it actually goes back into your 401k. So you're paying it back to yourself. That money comes out. It's not penalized. So there's no 10% penalty because you're under 59 and a half. You take that money and you can put it into your deal. And what's really dope about it, because it doesn't report, it doesn't impact your debt to income ratio. And I know I may be talking over somebody's head right now, but because this debt doesn't show up on Equifax or TransUnion and Experian, you can go borrow more money because effectively you've borrowed from yourself. So that's one way to play the 401k. Now, if your 401k is portable because you don't work there anymore, you got just an old 401k from a previous employer, that's when the self-directed piece and moving that 401k to a custodian to do that self-directed piece will make sense. And again, there's a lot of mechanics that goes on to that, but then you can use that, 401k to then, purchase said real estate. Another thing you can do, option 3, old 401k plan, you can actually move that over to a solo 401k, or what we call a single 401k. A lot of entrepreneurs don't know this, and a lot of people don't know this, and we advise a lot of clients on this. Old retirement dollars, you can actually create your own 401k, just like the 401k you had at your job in corporate America, and then turn around and do that same borrow from it. So instead of taking that money out and paying penalties and taxes and all kind of crazy shit because you didn't talk to an expert who could advise you on it, you can actually roll that money 100% of it to a solo 401k and borrow that same 50% from it. So how the deal is structured, it really kind of depends on, do you want to have that real estate live inside to self-directed IRA situation, or do you want to have it outside of it? It gets into some different mechanics with that. But yes, and again, what it all really comes down to is you built this asset, you put money into the 401k, and you may have had somebody matching you on the 401k. And now you can use that capital to go out and buy something that's going to create some passive income and generational wealth. So that's my 2 cents on that.
I love it. I love it. We really, so I have a mentorship program where I teach other people how to buy and manage long-term rentals. And that is a common, someone comes to us and says, I have this money, but it's tied up. So being able to tap into that is one of the very first steps in changing your life, right? So if you have the guidance on how to touch your money, how to, get access to your money, and then you have the guidance on how to actually buy savvy deals, that's a position that, you're mixing, like, this is what the truly wealthy are doing.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. Yep.
There's no secret.
It's nothing new underneath the sun. You just got to tap into the resources and find out what other people are doing. Absolutely. Man, this is so good, sis. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to bring you back on for some other stuff. Let me see how long we've been on here. We've been rocking here we've been rocking. All right. So before we get out of here, one thing kind of off the cuff here, reading your bio, we have 4 animals, 4 pets. 5.
Yes. Yeah.
What do we have?
Well, gosh, you really bring the mood down. So, we
no.
2 dogs and 3 cats, but we just lost a cat last week.
Oh,
I know. When you read that, I'm like, shoot, I need to update my bio.
Oh, my bad.
I know.
Oh,
no,
goodness.
It's okay. It's okay. She was a sweetheart. She just got real sick, and so, but we have a zoo. It's a bit of a zoo. 2 dogs, 2 cats. Yeah.
No doubt. So tying this back
to
babies. No doubt. So definitely sorry about that. Reason I asked, we just got a dog. We had a passing in our family. My mother passed away at the beginning of September, and we kind of navigating that whole piece. And my family's been wanting a dog. So we got a dog, and she has my mother's middle name. So Penny Ruth. So so we got Penny Ruth in the building. So she is the new addition to our family. So I get it. You know what I'm saying? Totally get it. No doubt about that.
Yeah, congrats on the pup.
Oh yeah, for sure. She's definitely a new extension to the family. Happy to be here. But I'm going to tie this now to the lifestyle piece, because I want to make sure that we lean into this. And then I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of share with the community, folks listening to the podcast, how they can connect with you and things of that nature. You've given so many gems today, Jessie, and man, but the one that really hit me the hardest was like, you don't have to have a huge portfolio to have financial freedom. Like, to be able to travel the world for a year and know that stuff is paid, and it wasn't like you had $10 million in the bank, right?
No.
I share with clients when we're educating them, helping them through their money stories, like, hey, here's the deal, yo. We've been told this, kind of sold this lie, if you will, that we got to have this huge asset base. We got to have all of this money. And I'll share this story, and then I'm going to hear a little bit, kind of get your thoughts on the whole lifestyle and financial freedom piece, but time freedom piece. I remember I had 2 clients, and one client had about 1.2 million with me invested, right? In retirement dollars, retired pharmacist, if you will. And I have another client, local client, who husband, wife couple had no more than about $230,000 together, right? On the outside looking in, you would be like, man, you got a 1.2 million, you're good to go. And then this couple, right, who only had, 200,000, right? You would think that the person who had $1 million was better off. But the person who had $1 million was burning through anywhere between 10 to 20 grand a month, right? Before taxes and all of that type jazz. Yeah. So, 20 grand a month, that's $240,000 a year. How long does $1 million last if you're burning through that, right? Whereas my couple who had the 200,000 has never touched their money because they had money coming in from rental properties. They had, you know what I'm saying, their debt was unmanaged or other people was paying for their debt. They had monies coming in from pension plans. They had money coming in from some dividends and things of that nature. So they were never touching their 200,000 because they didn't have a huge nest egg. And we're all kind of taught this, you got to grow this huge nest egg. And we try to explain to folks, like, yo, it ain't about the size of the nest egg. It's about the strength of your income, because you can have a small nest egg like you alluded to right here. I didn't have a huge, I think when I was taking my notes here, where we got up to like 4 or 5 properties before you was able to do that, or something along those lines. 3 properties. And being able to travel the world for a year. Like, are you kidding me? Like I'm about to come hire you right now myself. So let's lean into that. And then I want you to definitely share it with our community and our podcast listeners, how they can connect with you. But talk to us a little bit about just the lifestyle piece, and knowing that even though you're kind of managing your own properties and things of that nature, you do have some freedom to go. Like, so just lean into that a little bit.
Yeah. We definitely have freedom. I could take off whenever I want. I tend to really like what I do, and I love coaching. I love building our, portfolio. So I don't take off as much time as I should. I do know that it's like, what they say about entrepreneurship, that you think you're going to go and get all this time and all that, but you end up working harder than you did for someone else. But it's because I'm like so passionate about it. So, do I take off enough time? No. Could I take off all the time I wanted? Absolutely. Yeah. I could. And it's not only like big time blocks, like chunks of time. It's just time throughout the day also. So if I'm not feeling well one day, I need to sleep in, I have that flexibility. If I need to go to a vet appointment or, whatever it is, I have that flexibility. So it's not just like, hey, I'm going to go leave for a month. It's like, I can weave my personal and professional life in together in a way that's very seamless, in a way that's, very comfortable, and I'm happy. My wife's happy, on like the day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So many gems in that little bit of statement right there. Right. So yes, I bust my ass as an entrepreneur. My wife has finally got me to the point where when we do go on vacation, I don't open my computer. I still have it with me.
Oh, teach me your ways.
Still have it with me. At first, she used to give me like, hey, you get an hour a day. And then our last trip, I didn't open it up at all. She's like, I'm so proud of you. Didn't open it. Open it up all, right. But I love that, because it's not just, oh yeah, I can take off a year, but we can take off and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to spend the entire day hanging out with my wife and my daughters, or going to a game where I don't have to ask anybody to do this. Or we know that, when we were kind of going through our grieving, still going through our grieving right now, that our business actually had its best month of the year. And I was pretty much out of the office for the entire month of September. Right. So knowing that you have that is not just that time freedom, but that peace of mind, knowing that, hey, we're going to be okay. And we built something that still pays the bills, which is really, really awesome, which is what I really want for everyone, is to have that type of freedom, or even a portion of that, even if it's not, hey, I can take off, 30, 60, 90 days or 365 days, but knowing that, what, if I don't show up today, income is still coming in and bills are still being paid, and and now I can spend time, with my loved ones. But as entrepreneurs, we are going to stay on the grind because we're just wired that way. But having the option, I think, is so key.
I can sleep well knowing that I have the option, and knowing that, if something really went terribly wrong in my personal life, I could sell everything and be fine for decades. You know what I mean? So like, any little bumps in the road, I can sleep well because I know that we're ultimately very secure.
I love that.
So even if there's a bad month, a bad quarter, we have over the summer, man, we've just had pulling teeth to get people to pay rent. And you stress about it on a day-to-day, but ultimately, you've spent the time and effort building something that none of that little stuff matters.
Wow. That's it right there. I'll end with this, and then I want to make sure we give people a way to connect with you. I gave our definition of wealth, For those who are catching this maybe on the back end, that wealth is the accumulation of assets, which can be converted into passive income in order to cover your lifestyle expense. So that's our definition of wealth. So wealth is more of a process. How we measure wealth, which is a great just piggybacking on what you said right there, is in time. If you were to stop doing what you're doing today and have a liquidation sale, how long could you maintain your current quality of life? That's real wealth right there in time.
Yeah.
And you said it right there. If we have to sell everything, we're good for decades. Most individuals aren't good for 24 hours. They need that check to hit today just to pay the bills. Knowing
Yeah.
that the end goal is to build the asset base and build the income so that if there was a point in time you said we're done doing this, then we have, those years of wealth. And our measurement of financial freedom is when you have 30 years of wealth, and wealth is just 30 years of time. So based
Okay.
on building your assets, if you have to liquidate everything today, how much wealth do you have? If you got 15 years, you need to work on getting 15 more. If you're at 30, you're work optional right now. You're doing it just because you enjoy doing what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, we need to talk. I don't know where I am, but I'd love to know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Jessie, thank you so much for jumping
Yeah,
in our
you're welcome.
community and our podcast and sharing these gems. Such valuable stuff in here. And I love you just articulated everything in such an easy way to digest. How do our listeners, connect with you and get into your community and get into your ecosystem?
Yeah. So similar to the Facebook group that you're in now or the YouTube channel, we have our own Facebook group, randomly have the same word in our name, but ours is just Unlocked. It's like, the unlock the key to real estate kind of thing. So Unlocked, learn to buy and manage long-term rentals. I'm sure it'll be linked somewhere. We go live every week with trainings just like this. Perry will be our guest this coming Tuesday. So definitely hope to see you all there for that. And yeah, that's the best place is our Facebook group. I'm super active in there, really, really positive community. And we're all just trying to help each other. So it's a great place to be.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, sis, for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.